Happy coding.
Hey there, this is Kevin here in our next video in our Intro to Web Dev series. And in this video, we're going to finally start writing HTML. So in the last couple of classes, we used a website builder, and we've talked about like the history of the internet and whatnot. And that, using that website builder, you were able to create a website, but that was using, a service that did it for you. And from here on out, we're going to start to peel back the curtain and sort of think about how those work behind the scenes. And that will free you up to have, more creativity and more control over like customizing things as you want to. So yeah, in this video, I'm going to talk through HTML and what that is, and we're going to get started like actually writing HTML. So that's my plan here. So before we get into all of that, I want to encourage you to, I don't know, take a second, take a minute, take however long you want to think about the kinds of things you see on websites. So the kind of content that you see on websites. So I don't know, I have this one up because this is like the page that corresponds to this video. But any website will work. So you can go to whatever website you want and just look at it. Just look at the kinds of things that you can notice. So a few things I notice here is I have like a background image that's like these colorful lines. Up here I have sort of big text that shows up in this like sort of nav bar here, and they're links. So if I click on them, I will go to a different website. I also have, I don't know, things like images here. This is an image, and I have things like lists here. Over here, this like table of contents is a list. Same thing with this. This is a list. I also am noticing that it has like, bullet points here. And it's different colors and things like that. I'm noticing borders and like horizontal lines, maybe sort of splitting up the content. And then I get into some text itself. So here's maybe like some bigger text, which is a heading, and some smaller text, like just some regular paragraphs and all kinds of stuff, right? So here's another image, and you have likely seen many kinds of content, and you probably haven't even really thought too hard about it because it's just there, right? So I would like you to take a minute to just think about the kinds of things you've seen, or go to a website and just scroll around and be like, what kinds of things are you noticing? And that is HTML content. That is content that goes into a website. And there's many different kinds of content. So just, have that in mind. Think about that. So before we get into HTML, which is like a coding language that is used to sort of specify the kind of content that's in a website, I want to take a step back and think about markup more generally. So markup is like an older concept. It's something that you would have seen like in real life, like not really thinking about computers for a second. Let's say that you have, written like a research paper, a 10-page research paper on a book, or, whatever it is. And okay, let's say, all right, you might use a computer to print it out and stuff, but you hand it in to your teacher, and they get out their trusty red pen, and they start marking it up, like literally adding marks to the paper, like marking it up, like adding marks. And so they might be circling things, things that are either, right or wrong, or like, if you've made an especially interesting point, they might underline that. And in the margin, they might write like good job or good point, or, you could have done this differently, things like that. And what they are adding to your paper, they're not adding content to your paper, right? They're not helping you write your paper. Well, maybe they are helping you write it by providing markup, but they're not writing the paper itself. They aren't adding content. They are adding markup. They're marking up the content. So the way I think about it is markup is a way to specify or add extra information about the content. So in a paper, that's the content itself is, the stuff, the words that you typed. And the markup is, feedback maybe about that content. So it's not part of the content itself. It's extra information that's presented sort of maybe alongside or even inside of the content, but it's not the content itself. So that's markup. You would have seen that probably, in your real life, and you can probably think of other examples. So then when we get into sort of the computer science-y way that markup is talked about, markup is a way to add information about content without being the content itself. So before we get to HTML, I'm going to talk about a different markup language just to sort of compare and contrast. So that markup language is, okay, it's got a confusing name. I don't love that they named it this, but the name of the markup language is Markdown. So you can, type this into Google or whatever, and you'll get more information about it. And I'm guessing that it's likely that you would have seen it already. So I am in a markup editor, which is just a thing that lets me type Markdown and then see what it looks like when it's rendered. So if I type some normal text, so let's see, I've got, this is some bold text, right? I just typed it over here on the left and I can see it over here on the right. And it's just content, input, output, same thing. So now let's say I want to actually make one of these words bold. Let's say I want to make this bold word bold. And remember, I am dealing with like computer sort of input and output. So we're going behind the scenes of like, I'm not just going to select it and click the bold button. I'm going to communicate to the computer using some markup that it should do something. So in this case, it should bold this word. And in Markdown, the way that's done is with asterisks. So if I have 2 asterisks before and 2 asterisks after, that tells the computer to render that text that I have surrounded with my asterisks. So it looks like this. I've got asterisks here and asterisks. That's a hard word to say over and over again. Let's call them stars. I've got stars before and stars after. That tells the computer that that word should be bold. And so the stars themselves, the asterisks themselves, are not part of the content, right? So if I go over here, I don't see the asterisks. That's not part of the content. That is markup. That is extra information about the content. In this case, it is telling the computer to render it a certain way, in this case, bold. So it's like meta information about the content, but not the content itself. That's markup. So Markdown has other, ways to specify different kinds of content. So if I have like a hash symbol and then I say, hello world, that renders as this huge sort of heading. And I could also do things like, I don't know, let's do like a list. So, I'm not good at coming up with things on the fly, but, 1, 2, 3. And if you look, the way I'm doing that is by adding dashes. So I have -1, -2, and -3. And the dashes themselves are not part of the content. I'm not telling the computer, hey, show a dash here. I'm telling the computer that this is a list and you should display it in like a bulleted list form. So over here, when it actually renders it, that's what I end up getting. So this is a pretty popular markup language. Markdown is a popular markup language. Again, I hate the name, but that's what they chose. And this is used in a lot of like online forums and stuff because you can just type and add symbols as you go without like going back and forth between, the bold button or whatever. So the markup or markdown is like directly in the text, which makes it a little easier to type. But those symbols, those markup symbols, are not part of the content itself. It's marking up the content. So there are many other types of markup language that you would have seen, like BB code is maybe now it's kind of an older one, but it used like square brackets. That's kind of old school forum stuff. And there's others. But markup is markdown is one of the more popular ones. So that is sort of markup in general. And so now I will get more into HTML. So HTML is a markup language. That's why I'm talking about markup, because HTML is hypertext markup language. That's what it stands for. So hypertext is just text that can link to each other. That's a website, and the ML is markup language, HTML. So the way HTML works is this. It's pretty similar to Markdown in that it has like extra symbols and extra characters that you can add to the content, but it's not part of the content. It's markup. And to show that, maybe I'll just dive in. So I'm going to go over to Glitch. So I've lost my link, so bear with me while I go find that. I put that in online code editors. So I'm going to open up a new Glitch. I'm going to remix the template that we are going to use. So I'm just going to click this, open that in a new tab, and it's loading the Glitch editor. So it's going to take a second. And what this is doing is sort of copying the files over into my own project so that I can change it without messing up the original. So here I am. I am in the Glitch editor, and what I have, let me make this a little bigger. Yeah, good, cool. Is I have some files on the left. For the most part, we're going to mostly ignore that for the first couple weeks. So I might just collapse this. I think I can do that. Yeah. So I've really got some HTML over here on the left, and I've got the sort of result over here on the right. And if I look more closely at the HTML, you can start to see that there's a mix of content and markup. And in this case, the markup is HTML. So just eyeballing it, really, you can probably start to guess at how some of it fits together just by comparing what you see on the left to what you see on the right. And so I'm going to ignore this head section for now. I'll come back to this later. But if I look at here, I've got Hello World, and this is my website. And that is what shows up over here. So if I change this to, I don't know, like Hello Kevin, that will change over here. And so I can already guess that this corresponds to this. And if I look at how that's specified, I see that this content is surrounded by this HTML. And this is called an HTML tag. And this is like a coding language. So coding languages are pretty particular. So this is going to be, an ongoing journey. Welcome to the world of coding, where you have to be like really specific about exactly what characters you type. But let's say I wanted to add a new heading. I just wanted another one. So let's say I'm going to push enter a couple times just to give myself some room. And I'm going to type an HTML tag, which is the less than symbol. So I'm going to do shift and then less than, and then the name of the tag. In this case, I'm going to use the same tag. So I'm going to say H1, and then what is this? A greater than symbol. So it's the other angle bracket there. And Glitch is nice. It gives me sort of an autocomplete thing where it has already given me what would be called the closing tag, which is pretty much the same thing. It's the angle brackets with the name of the tag. The big difference is that it has this slash in there. So this is saying to the computer, hey, when you see this tag, I want to give you a heading. And when you see this closing tag, I am done giving you the heading. So it's similar to like surrounding things with stars to make them bold. You have like the beginning, and then you have the content, and then you have the end, marking that it's like the end of the thing that you're specifying. I'm going to just type something in here like I'm learning HTML, exclamation point. So you can have new lines in here if you want to. I would just stick with like the default formatting that Glitch gives you, and that's totally fine. But here we are. We see it over here on the right. I've got my first H1 here, and I've got my second H1 here. I'm learning HTML, and it's shown in this like big, bold font because it is a heading. from here, I'm going to kind of look at what other tags I might notice. And so, you can learn more about this, and I'll talk about that in a second. But I've got a few things. I've got this title tag, and that doesn't actually show up over here in the content itself. Where that will show up is, let me launch this in a new tab, or let's see. So what do I want to do? I want to, I just want to open this in a new tab. Open a new window. That's what I want. So if I look over here at the title, you might think that like the title is this thing, right? Well, not quite. The title is the title of the tab. So it doesn't show up in the website itself. It shows up in the tab in your browser. So here I have a Happy Coding HTML template. And over here I have, it's probably hard to see in the video, but it says Happy Coding HTML template. So if I change that to, I don't know, hello, Kevin again, maybe I'll change it to, I don't know, like my really great title, whatever. And I'm going to give that a second. I can hit save, but Glitch will just tell me that it auto saves. So I always do that. And then I'm going to go over here and refresh. So I'm going to refresh. And now I see up here, it's really hard to see, and I don't know how to zoom into that part of it. But believe me that it says my really great title. So you can try that out yourself. So that's the title tag. And then I have this P tag down here, where I am specifying like some regular text, and P stands for paragraph. So this is like a normal paragraph that you might have a few of these. So if I type this, so I'm going to create a new P tag by typing the like less than symbol, and then I'm going to type P, and then the greater than symbol. And Glitch is nice enough to automatically give me that closing bracket. And then I'm going to type something in here like this is another paragraph. And then over here, there it is, pops up there. This is another paragraph. Okay, so that is typing HTML in a nutshell. You type the opening tag, which is this funny looking thing with the angle brackets, the name of the tag, and then you type the content itself, whatever text you want to show up, and then you type the closing tag, which is pretty much the same thing as the opening tag, except it has a little slash in there. So that is sort of the fundamentals of typing HTML and creating HTML by like adding tags, which is markup, but it's HTML markup. So adding HTML tags around the content to mark that content up so that the browser knows what you want it to display as. Okay, so from here, I went through a few tags here, just the kind of starter tags that I provided in the template itself, but the rest of the class really is going to be finding other things that you can do and then pulling them into your project. So I am not encouraging you to memorize like a bunch of HTML tags. I don't think that's a great use of your time. Instead, what I encourage you to do is find ways to look them up. So there's a few places to do that. So in, the most obvious place is maybe the tutorial where we started. So that's HTML tags. This is a tutorial that I wrote, which is an introduction to some of the most used HTML tags that you'll come across. So you can read through this page for an explanation of some of the more popular tags. So if I find one, I don't know. So here I wanted more info about that title, here it is. Here's like a short introduction about it. And here's some headings. And let's see, here's paragraphs. And okay, so here's one like lists UL and LI. So this is an interesting one. Maybe I'm kind of debating. Maybe I'll come back to this because this is just one place that you can look. But this is not a complete list. I think it would be almost impossible to give you a complete list because it's kind of always changing. So the other thing that you can do is use Google, use whatever, use your favorite search engine, DuckDuckGo or Bing or whatever. So what I would do is type in like HTML tags. And you're going to find a bunch of resources. So a few of the better ones. W3 Schools is great. I think that's one of the ones that I gravitate towards the most. MDN is another one. This is Mozilla Developer Network. This is another one. Some of these other ones, Geeks for Geeks, not so much. They usually have a ton of advertisements. But W3 Schools and MDN, those are your new best friends. So check them out. So I encourage you to just kind of read through there. And over here on the left, actually right here in the middle, in both places, there are a bunch of HTML tags here. And so anything that looks interesting to you, you can click through and check it out. So this block quote, so let's say I want to add a quote to my website. This might come in handy. If I have, I don't know, all kinds of stuff. A footer tag. Here's the heading tags that we were talking about before. Image tag might be interesting to play with. And a lot of these are going to work very similarly to what we were just doing, where you have an opening tag, some content, and then a closing tag. And so that's like kind of just like looking at tags and perusing them. So let's look at MDN. Let's see what this looks like. Yeah, over here on the left, let's see. Yeah, here, just a bunch of different elements or tags that you can use. And you can peruse and click through and see what the options are. The other thing that I encourage you to do is, again, an approach to Googling it, is think about the content, like what it is, and then type that in with the word HTML tag after it. So if I say like, I don't know, like list HTML tag, let's say I wanted to figure out what, well, this is a goofy example because I already have it up there, but where'd that go? Here. So you've probably seen these like bulleted lists before, let's say I have no idea how to do that. Well, I might just type into Google like HTML bullet list or something. And yeah, HTML lists, maybe. I'll just click that. And yeah, this looks pretty promising. So an unordered HTML list, it's a bunch of items in a list with a circle, with a bullet. And if I go down here, I get an example. And this looks pretty promising. It's got HTML tags and content. I will say that W3 Schools is cool because it gives you this try it yourself button. So you can try this and it'll open up like an online editor where you can type stuff and hit the run button just to play around and see what it does. But since we're using Glitch, we can pretty much just do that in Glitch. So what I'm going to do is copy this in and go back to my Glitch tab, wherever that went. And let's say I'm just going to put it here. And I think Glitch will automatically, if I click this prettier button, it'll format it. Yeah, there we go. So rather than like dealing with the white space yourself and trying to get everything lined up, the white space doesn't really matter, but it makes it easier to read. So I don't know, I spam this prettier button. But here's the tags that I pasted in. So I've got a UL tag, so unordered list. That's UL, that's what it stands for. That's an opening tag. And then immediately inside of that, I don't have content yet. I actually have another HTML tag. So that's an important thing to sort of notice, is that HTML tags can be nested. So you have one HTML tag inside of another one, and the nesting can go quite deep. So if you look at like the whole document itself, I've got like a sort of parent level HTML tag. And then inside of that, I've got a head tag. Inside of that, I've got a title. Then my head section is kind of done. Then I've got another body section. Then I've got an HTML tag inside the body section. So it's this hierarchy that that you have with your HTML content. So just keep that in mind. Anyway, back to my list tag here, my unordered list tag. I then have 3 li elements or sets of tags in here. Li is list item, and I can just change this to whatever I want. So let's say I wanted to start like shaping this up to be a website that's about me. So maybe I would change this content to say, here are my favorite animals. And then I want my list to have, I don't know, let's say like cats, bees, and I don't know, snails. And again, my HTML contains a mix of HTML tags, which are starting tags, and then content, and then ending tags. Okay, so that is HTML in a nutshell. So we are using the Glitch editor to write HTML, but you can write HTML in pretty much any text editor. It has to be like a basic text editor. So like Notepad or like TextEdit, I think it would be called on a Mac. You don't want a word processor. So you don't want like Google Docs. You don't want Microsoft Word because those, you're dealing with like rich text where the computer is handling all of that for you. Like you don't have, opening and closing tags in Microsoft Word, right? You just click the bold button. But in HTML, you're down a level. You're at you're coding now. So you can do this in other editors. So I just want to call that out. But I think Glitch is one of the easier ones to get started with because it gives you this preview on the right, and you can share your creation pretty easily. So we're using Glitch Editor and we're writing HTML. And HTML, again, is a set of tags, which are an opening tag, some content, and then a closing tag. And then from there, it's a question of what HTML tags are out there. And you can find that out by going to a search engine, typing in, search queries and looking up examples on, tutorial sites and whatnot, and copying them in. And honestly, that is web development in a nutshell. We're going to get into many other concepts that you can use, but the core, cycle of having a goal, looking it up on the internet, how to do that, and then trying it out, and kind of banging your head against it for a little bit, and eventually succeeding. That's coding. That's web development. That's software engineering in general. So that's going to be pretty much the rest of the class. All right, I think I'll leave it there. Thanks for watching. We now know what HTML is and we can start to write it. And over the next couple of videos, we're going to get into like a more specific project. And then after that, we're going to get into, many other concepts, like how do we make this prettier? How do we make it different colors, different fonts? And how to make it interactive, for example. So lots more to do, but HTML is like the most fundamental building block. So it's important to start here. All right, well, I'll see you in the next one. Class dismissed.